My sister borrowed $200,000 for fertility treatments she never had. Now she's pregnant naturally and wants me to fund the nursery. The pregnancy announcement arrived as a text message at 9:23 on a Thursday morning while I was reviewing quarterly reports at my desk. A photo of a positive pregnancy test with the caption, "Miracles do happen. Baby Lewis coming March 2024. Below that, a second message. "Can we talk about nursery plans? I have the cutest ideas and I know you'll want to help make this special." I stared at my phone until the screen went dark. My sister Valerie was pregnant. Naturally pregnant. After I'd given her $200,000 for IVF treatments that her insurance wouldn't cover, after she'd told me for 2 years that the procedures weren't working, after she'd sent me photos of clinic waiting rooms and tearful updates about failed implantations. Now she was pregnant naturally and wanted me to pay for the nursery like this was normal. Like the $200,000 was just the opening investment in her journey to motherhood, and of course I'd want to contribute more. My hands started shaking so badly I had to set my coffee cup down before I dropped it. Something about this felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate yet, but my body knew before my brain caught up. I'd been working as a financial analyst for a pharmaceutical company for 8 years when Valerie first told me she was struggling with infertility. She was 32, I was 35, and we'd always been close despite our different life paths. She'd married her college boyfriend Ryan at 23 and spent the next decade building a life that looked perfect from the outside. Beautiful house in a planned community, designer clothes, elaborate dinner parties. I'd focused on my career, bought a modest condo, saved aggressively, invested carefully. Our parents died in a car accident when I was 28, leaving us each a small inheritance that Valerie spent on renovating her kitchen while I put mine into index funds. We had different priorities, but we were sisters. When she called me crying about not being able to get pregnant, I wanted to help. She explained that they'd been trying for 3 years with no success. Her doctor recommended IVF, but their insurance classified it as elective and wouldn't cover a single dollar. Each round cost between $15,000 and $20,000, and success wasn't guaranteed. They'd need multiple rounds, maybe 5 or 6 before it worked. The total could easily reach $100,000 or more. Ryan's salary as a sales manager was decent, but they had a large mortgage, car payments, the lifestyle they'd built. They didn't have that kind of money saved. She asked if I could help, just a loan to get started, and she'd pay me back once Ryan got his next promotion. I remember sitting in my living room that night running numbers in my head. I had substantial savings, partly from living below my means and partly from smart investments that had performed well. I could afford to help Valerie without destroying my own financial security. The thought of my sister unable to have the child she desperately wanted because of money felt unbearable. Family helped family. That's what our mother always taught us. I told Valerie I'd give her $50,000 to start, not a loan but a gift, because I didn't want money to create tension between us. She cried on the phone and told me I was saving her life, that she'd never forget this, that I'd be the most important aunt to this future baby. That first $50,000 left my account in October 2020. She started her first IVF round immediately, sent me photos from the clinic waiting room, her and Ryan holding hands looking nervous, updates about the hormone injections making her emotional and bloated, texts describing the egg retrieval procedure and how many viable embryos they'd gotten. Then, 3 weeks later, the devastating news that the implantation had failed. She wasn't pregnant. The doctor recommended trying again after her body had a month to recover. I sent another $25,000 in December, then $30,000 in March 2021 after the second round also failed, then $35,000 in June. Each time, Valerie sent detailed updates about the procedures, the medications, the doctor's recommendations. Each time the implantation failed or she miscarried early. Each time she was devastated and hopeful simultaneously. The doctor kept saying they were close, that her body was responding well to the treatments, that the next round would be the one. By September 2022, I'd given her $198,000 total across multiple transfers. My savings account had gone from comfortably substantial to uncomfortably thin. I'd stopped contributing to my retirement accounts to preserve liquidity. Delayed buying a new car even though mine was 12 years old and making concerning noises. Put off the bathroom renovation I'd been planning. But Valerie was my sister, and she was so close to having her baby. I could rebuild my savings over time. She couldn't get these years back. The last $2,000 went to her in November 2022 for medication costs. She told me this would definitely be the final round, that the doctor was extremely optimistic, that they'd made adjustments to the hormone protocol that should make all the difference. I waited for the update about whether the implantation had succeeded. Waited through Thanksgiving and into December. When I finally asked, Valerie said the doctor wanted to wait a few more weeks before testing to make sure. Then it was Christmas, and she seemed distracted at our family gathering, not wanting to talk about the treatments. In January 2023, she told me the round had failed again, but they were taking a break to let her body rest. The doctor recommended waiting at least 6 months before trying again. She seemed depressed, withdrawn, stopped answering my texts as quickly as she used to. I gave her space, thinking she needed time to grieve another failure. Then in May, she sent me a text saying she and Ryan had decided to stop the treatments. The emotional toll was too much. The financial stress was destroying them. They were going to accept being childless and focus on other life goals. I told her I was sorry and that I'd support whatever decision she made. She thanked me for everything I'd done and said she'd pay me back somehow, someday. Now, 6 months after telling me she'd stopped treatments, she was pregnant naturally, and texting me about nursery plans like I owed her more money. I texted back asking how far along she was. She responded immediately, "Just hit 12 weeks. We waited to announce until we were past the scary first trimester. We're so excited." 12 weeks meant she'd gotten pregnant in July, just 2 months after supposedly stopping the treatments. Something cold settled in my stomach. I texted, "That's wonderful. When did you conceive?" Her response took longer this time. Not exactly sure. Sometime in July, probably. Why?" I typed carefully. Just curious if this happened naturally or if it was from the treatments after all. 3 dots appeared and disappeared multiple times before her response came through. Naturally. The doctor said sometimes stopping the treatments actually helps your body reset and then you can get pregnant on your own. It's like a miracle. I stared at that message for a long time. Something about it felt rehearsed, like she'd prepared this explanation in advance. I pushed the feeling down and texted congratulations, said I was happy for her, and ignored the part about the nursery. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I pulled up my bank statements and went through every transfer I'd made to Valerie over the past 2 years. $198,000 total, sent in 10 separate transfers ranging from $15,000 to $35,000. Each one carefully labeled in my records. Val, IVF round 1, Val, IVF round 2, continuing through round 6. I'd tracked it meticulously because I'm an analyst by nature and by profession. I document everything. Looking at the numbers made my chest tight. That was 4 years of aggressive savings. That was the down payment on a house I'd been planning to buy. That was early retirement money. That was financial security I'd worked for a decade to build, all given to my sister because I believed she was suffering through failed fertility treatments. And now she was pregnant naturally, just months after supposedly stopping the treatments, and texting me about nursery furniture like I was at ATM dispensing money for her life milestones. I opened a bottle of wine and drank 2 glasses while staring at my bank statements. Then I did something I'd never done before. I Googled Valerie's fertility doctor. She'd mentioned the name several times over the years, Dr. Lisa Hammond at Reproductive Health Associates. The clinic's website showed up immediately, professional and modern with testimonials from grateful parents. I clicked through the pages looking for something, though I wasn't sure what. Then I found the services and pricing page. IVF treatment packages started at $12,000 for a standard cycle. More expensive than Valerie had told me, but not dramatically so. But then I noticed something else. The clinic offered financing options through a medical credit company. Payment plans, low interest rates, flexible terms. If Valerie and Ryan couldn't afford to pay up front, they could have financed the treatments. Why had she needed to come to me for $200,000 if financing was available? I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they'd been denied for financing because of debt or credit issues. Maybe the clinic's financing had restrictions. Maybe I was looking for problems where none existed because I was stressed about money and feeling taken advantage of. But the cold feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. I spent the weekend doing things I'd never imagined doing. I Googled Ryan's job title and company to estimate his salary. Found LinkedIn profiles suggesting he made around $95,000 annually. Good money, but combined with Valerie's part-time work as a yoga instructor, maybe $115,000 household income. I looked up property records for their house, purchased in 2018 for $425,000, current estimated value $580,000. I felt disgusting for snooping, but I couldn't stop. Sunday evening, I did something I'd been avoiding. I looked at Valerie's social media accounts. Her Instagram was public, carefully curated photos of her perfect life. I scrolled back through 2 years of posts, looking at the timeline against my bank transfers. October 2020, when I'd sent the first $50,000. Photos of Valerie and Ryan at a winery in Napa Valley. Captions about spontaneous getaways and living in the moment. December 2020, second payment. Shopping bags from Nordstrom and Sephora. A new designer handbag. March 2021, third payment. Renovation photos of their master bathroom, marble countertops, and a freestanding tub. June 2021, fourth payment. Vacation photos from Cancun, resort pools and beach sunsets. The pattern continued through every single payment I'd made. Luxury purchases, expensive trips, home renovations. Never any photos from medical clinics, never any posts about fertility struggles. Just an increasingly lavish lifestyle that seemed to correlate directly with my bank transfers. My hands were shaking again. I took screenshots of everything, organized by date, matched against my payment records. The correlation was impossible to ignore. Every time I sent money supposedly for IVF treatments, Valerie and Ryan went on vacation or bought something expensive or renovated part of their house. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted there to be an innocent explanation. Maybe they were coping with the stress of fertility treatments by treating themselves. Maybe the trips and purchases were their way of dealing with disappointment. Maybe the clinic photos existed, but Valerie chose not to post them publicly. But the cold feeling kept growing. Monday morning, I called Reproductive Health Associates. My voice sounded calm even though my heart was racing. I told the receptionist I was inquiring about treatment for my sister Valerie Lewis and wanted to verify her account before sending payment. The receptionist asked me to hold. When she came back, her voice was confused. "I'm sorry, but I don't see any patient by that name in our system. Can you spell the last name for me?" I spelled it. She checked again. No records. I tried Valerie's maiden name. Still nothing. The receptionist asked if I was sure about the clinic name. I said yes, and thanked her before hanging up. My entire body had gone cold. I sat at my desk staring at nothing while my brain tried to process what this meant. Valerie had never been a patient at the clinic she'd told me she was using for treatments, the clinic she'd sent me photos from, the doctor she'd quoted in dozens of text messages. I left work early claiming illness, which wasn't entirely a lie. My stomach felt like I'd swallowed acid. I drove home and went through every text message Valerie had sent me over the past 2 years. Hundreds of messages about the IVF process, the medications, the procedures, the doctor's recommendations. I zoomed in on the photos she'd sent from the clinic waiting rooms. Generic medical office furniture, plain walls, nothing identifying visible. I'd assumed they were from Reproductive Health Associates because that's what Valerie told me. Now I realized the photos could be from anywhere. Any medical office, any waiting room. I found one photo that showed part of a sign on the wall behind Valerie. I zoomed in as far as my phone would allow. The sign said, "Family Medicine, Dr. Robert Chen." Not a fertility clinic, a regular family practice. Chen was one of the most common last names in the country. This could be any family doctor's office anywhere. I felt sick. The photos weren't even from a fertility clinic. They were staged. Valerie had sat in a regular doctor's office, maybe her own general practitioner's office, and taken photos to send to me as proof she was undergoing fertility treatments. The betrayal felt physical, like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed. I needed proof before I confronted her. If I accused her without evidence, she'd deny everything and I'd look like a paranoid sister who couldn't handle her success. I needed documentation that would be impossible to dispute. I spent that evening researching private investigators, found one named Tom Sterling who specialized in financial fraud cases. His website showed credentials including 20 years as a police detective before going private. I called his office at 8:45 the next morning. He answered professionally and listened while I explained the situation. Sister claimed she needed money for fertility treatments. I gave her $198,000 over 2 years. She was now pregnant naturally. Something felt wrong. Tom asked good questions. Did I have the clinic name? Yes. Did I have text messages and photos? Yes. Did I have records of the transfers? Yes. He said he could investigate, but it would cost $5,000 for a comprehensive background check and paper trail analysis. Another $5,000 I didn't really have after depleting my savings, but I couldn't let this go. I hired him that morning. Tom said he'd start immediately and should have preliminary findings within 5 days. Meanwhile, Valerie kept texting about the nursery. She'd found the perfect crib at Pottery Barn, $1,200. And this amazing rocking chair, $800. Plus the changing table and dresser set, another $2,500. She'd created a Pinterest board with the whole design scheme, neutral colors, woodland theme, everything coordinated perfectly. She sent me the link with a message. "I know you'll want to contribute to your future niece or nephew's room. The total is around $8,000 for everything I picked out. I figured we could split it. You do $5,000 and I'll cover the rest?" The audacity stunned me. After taking $198,000, she wanted another $5,000 for furniture. I didn't respond. She texted again 2 hours later. "Did you see my message? I need to order this stuff soon because there's a sale ending this week." I finally replied, "I need to hold off on any expenses right now. My savings are pretty depleted after helping with the fertility treatments." Her response came immediately. "But this is different. This is for your niece or nephew. Don't you want to be involved?" I put my phone away and tried to focus on work. That afternoon, she called me. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. Finally, I answered. Valerie's voice was sharp with frustration. Why are you being weird about the nursery? You've been so generous helping us try to have a baby. Now we're actually having one and you don't want to be part of it. I took a breath and kept my voice level. Val, I gave you $198,000 for IVF treatments. That's a huge amount of money. I'm not in a position to give you more right now. Silence. Then, I know, and I'm so grateful for that. But the treatments didn't work, so in a way that money was wasted. This is actual baby stuff for an actual baby that's actually coming. Isn't this what the money was supposed to be for in the first place? The logic was twisted but delivered with absolute conviction. The money I gave her for treatments that supposedly didn't work was somehow wasted, so now I owed her money for the baby she conceived naturally. I need some time to think about everything, I said carefully. The pregnancy is wonderful news, but I need to get my finances in order. Valerie's voice shifted to the wounded tone she'd perfected over the years. I just thought you'd be excited. I thought you'd want to help welcome your niece or nephew. But if money is more important to you than family, I guess I understand what that says about you. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my car in the parking lot at work, hands gripping the steering wheel, fighting the urge to cry or scream or both. That night, Valerie posted on Facebook about the pregnancy. The post was public, visible to everyone, and included a long caption about their fertility journey. She wrote about years of trying, the heartbreak of failed treatments, the emotional and financial toll, and finally accepting they might never have children. Then, miraculously, she got pregnant naturally, just when they'd given up hope. The post had 53 comments within an hour, all congratulating her and praising her strength through such a difficult journey. I read every comment while my blood pressure climbed. People who didn't know what I'd sacrificed commenting about how inspiring Valerie was, how strong, how she deserved this blessing after everything she'd been through. Several people mentioned the financial burden of fertility treatments and how unfair it was that insurance didn't cover them. Valerie responded to those comments saying they'd exhausted their savings, but it had been worth it to never give up on their dream. Exhausted their savings. She'd exhausted my savings. I closed Facebook and opened my text thread with Valerie, typed and deleted a dozen messages before finally sending, "When you say you exhausted your savings on treatments, you mean the money I gave you, right?" She read it immediately. 3 dots appeared and disappeared. Finally, "Well, yeah, we used that money for treatments. Why?" I typed, "Just want to make sure I understand where the $198,000 went." No response. I waited 30 minutes. Still nothing. Then, at 10:18 p.m., my phone rang. Valerie's name on the screen. I answered, and she immediately went on the offensive. "Why are you interrogating me about money? Do you want a detailed receipt for every dollar? Because I don't have that. The clinic didn't itemize everything perfectly. I gave them money and they provided treatments. That's how it works." "I'm just trying to understand the timeline," I said, keeping my voice calm even though my heart was pounding. "You stopped treatments in May, got pregnant in July. That's only 2 months later. The doctor said it happens sometimes. Your body resets after you stop all the hormones. It's actually pretty common. You can Google it." I could Google it. Like I could Google whether reproductive health associates had any record of her being a patient. I swallowed the accusation that wanted to explode out of me. Tom Sterling had told me to wait for his investigation before confronting her. If I accused her now without proof, she'd have time to construct lies and destroy evidence. "I'm just surprised is all," I said carefully. 2 years of failed treatments and then you get pregnant naturally within weeks of stopping. It's lucky." "It's not luck. It's a miracle. I prayed for this baby. God answered my prayers." Religion was new for Valerie. She'd never been particularly spiritual before. Now suddenly God was responsible for her natural pregnancy. "I'm happy for you," I said, even though the words tasted like ash. "I just need some time before I can think about contributing to the nursery." "You know what? Forget it. Forget I even asked. I thought you'd want to be part of this, but clearly I was wrong." She hung up. Again. Tom Sterling called me on day 4 of his investigation. His voice was professional, but I could hear the edge of something else underneath. Anger maybe, or disgust. "You need to come to my office. I have information you'll want to see in person." I left work early again and drove to his office in a converted warehouse building downtown. Tom's space was utilitarian. Desk, filing cabinets, computer equipment, walls covered with certifications and commendations from his police years. He gestured for me to sit and opened a thick folder. "I've compiled comprehensive findings. Some of this is going to be difficult to hear." He started with the fertility clinic. He'd called Reproductive Health Associates posing as an insurance investigator verifying claims. No records of Valerie Lewis as a patient. Never had been. He'd checked 3 other major fertility clinics in the area with the same result. 0 records. It's possible she went to a clinic in another city, Tom said, but given what else I found, I don't think that's the case. He pulled out printed bank statements. Somehow he'd obtained records showing large deposits into Valerie and Ryan's joint account, matching the dates and amounts of my transfers exactly. Then he showed me where that money went. $45,000 to a home improvement company for the bathroom renovation I'd seen on Instagram. $18,000 to a travel agency for trips to Napa, Cancun, and Hawaii. $32,000 in credit card payments. $28,000 to a luxury car dealership for a down payment on Ryan's new Audi. The list continued, every dollar traced and documented. There's no evidence any of this money went to medical expenses, Tom said quietly. She used it for lifestyle upgrades and debt reduction. I stared at the printouts until the numbers blurred. My money had paid for their bathroom, their vacations, their car, their credit card debt from whatever they'd been buying before I started funding their lifestyle. How did you get their bank records? I asked. Tom smiled slightly. I have contacts who owe me favors, and what I'm about to show you came from public records and social media analysis. He pulled out more papers, screenshots from a private Instagram account belonging to Ryan's sister, Melissa. The account was set to private, but Tom had convinced her to accept a follow request from a fake profile. The screenshots showed family gathering photos, dinner party pictures, and most damning, a group chat conversation from November 2020, shortly after I'd sent the first $50,000. In the chat, Ryan had written, "Finally convinced Val's sister to give us the money. She totally bought the fertility story. This should cover the bathroom reno in Cancun." Melissa had responded, "Genius. How'd you come up with that?" Ryan, Val read some article about IVF being expensive and people crowdfunding for it. Figured her sister wouldn't say no to helping with the baby. She's got money saved and no life to spend it on. The conversation continued with them joking about how gullible I was and how easy it had been to manipulate me. My hands started shaking. I set the papers down before I crushed them. Tom continued. There's more. In August 2022, right after you sent the $35,000 payment, Melissa posted a photo from what appears to be a celebration dinner. The caption says, "Celebrating Ryan's promotion," with money bag emojis. In the photo, you can see a card on the table. I enhanced the image. He showed me the blown-up photo. The card, clearly visible, said, "Congratulations on the promotion and the baby." The timestamp was August 2022, 7 months ago, which meant Valerie had known she was pregnant, or at least suspected, while still asking me for money supposedly for fertility treatments. She'd lied to my face while already carrying the baby she'd spent 2 years pretending to struggle to conceive. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of Tom's desk. "They've been scamming you from the beginning," Tom said gently. "The fertility treatments never existed. They saw an opportunity to get money from you and they took it, repeatedly." I couldn't speak. Tom gave me a bottle of water and waited while I drank it and tried to steady my breathing. Finally, I asked, "What can I do? Can I sue her? Can she be prosecuted?" Tom nodded. "Absolutely. This is textbook fraud, obtaining money under false pretenses. The text messages where she explicitly stated the money was for IVF treatments constitute written documentation of the fraud. The bank records showing the money went to personal expenses rather than medical costs prove the deception. You have an extremely strong case." "I need a lawyer," I said. Tom already had a referral ready. "Catherine Frost. She specializes in fraud cases and family financial crimes. She's tough and she doesn't lose." He handed me her card. I called Catherine Frost from my car in the parking lot. Her assistant answered, and I explained I needed to discuss a fraud case involving my sister. She had an opening the next morning at 9 a.m. I took it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying every conversation with Valerie, every text message, every photo she'd sent, seeing all of it through the new lens of knowing it was planned deception. The tears when she'd called to ask for the first payment, the updates about failed procedures, the depression when she announced she was stopping treatments. All performance. All calculated manipulation designed to extract maximum money from me. I'd believed every word because she was my sister and I trusted her. That trust had cost me $198,000 and years of my financial life. Around 3 a.m., I got up and made a spreadsheet. Listed every payment I'd made with dates, amounts, and Valerie's stated reason. Then I attached Tom's evidence showing what the money actually paid for. The document was devastating in its clarity. 18 payments totaling $198,000. Not $1 of which went to fertility treatments, all of it funding their lifestyle while they laughed at how gullible I was. Catherine Frost's office was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel and expensive artwork. She was in her mid-50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. Her handshake was firm and professional. I spent an hour walking her through everything. She took detailed notes, asked clarifying questions, reviewed Tom Sterling's evidence with the intensity of someone who'd done this many times. When I finished, she sat back and steepled her fingers. This is one of the clearest fraud cases I've seen. Your sister and her husband engaged in a conspiracy to obtain money from you through deliberate false statements. They documented those false statements in text messages and email. They spent the money on personal luxuries rather than the stated medical purpose. We have multiple witnesses through the sisters' social media posts. This is prosecutable both criminally and civilly. She outlined my options. Criminal prosecution would involve filing a report with the police, who would investigate and potentially press charges. But criminal cases required proof beyond a reasonable doubt and could take years. Civil action would involve suing Valerie and Ryan for fraud, seeking return of the $198,000 plus damages, legal fees, and interest. Civil cases used a lower standard of proof and moved faster. Catherine recommended pursuing both tracks simultaneously. File a criminal complaint to create an official record and pressure them. Simultaneously file a civil suit to recover the money. They're going to claim it was a gift, Catherine warned, that you gave them money voluntarily and they don't owe you anything. I have texts where I specifically said the money was for IVF treatments, I said. Every single transfer was labeled that way. This wasn't a general gift. Catherine smiled. Exactly. That's what makes this winnable. You condition the transfer of funds on their specific use for medical treatments. When they used the money for other purposes, they violated that condition and committed fraud. It's textbook fraudulent inducement. She quoted me her retainer, $10,000. I winced but pulled out my credit card. Another $10,000 on top of the $5,000 for Tom Sterling and the $198,000 I'd already lost. My savings account was now dangerously low. But I couldn't let Valerie and Ryan get away with this. Catherine assured me we'd seek to recover my legal fees as part of the settlement or judgment. She'd draft the initial complaint and file it within a week. In the meantime, I should document any further attempts by Valerie to get money from me. I left Catherine's office feeling simultaneously empowered and terrified. I was about to sue my own sister. Our family would implode. But what family did we really have? A family built on lies and manipulation wasn't family. It was exploitation with a biological connection. That afternoon, Valerie texted me. I've been thinking about what you said about your finances. I totally understand. The nursery can wait. But I'm having a gender reveal party next month and I'd love for you to help host it. Nothing huge, maybe just $1,500 to rent a venue and get it catered. You don't have to contribute to the nursery if you help with the party. The audacity was breathtaking. I screenshot the text and forwarded it to Catherine with a note. More requests for money. She responded within minutes. Perfect. Keep documenting everything. I didn't respond to Valerie. Didn't acknowledge the request. Just let it sit there unread on her end. 2 hours later, she called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Hey, it's me. Did you see my text about the gender reveal? I really need to know soon so I can book the venue. Call me back. The voicemail had the same entitled edge as everything else. Like she genuinely believed she deserved my money for every event in her life. That night, I called the only other family I had left. My Aunt Gloria, my mother's sister who lived in Arizona. I hadn't spoken to her in months, but I needed someone to talk to who wasn't professionally involved in the situation. Gloria answered on the third ring, delighted to hear from me. We caught up on basic life stuff. Then I took a breath and told her everything. The $198,000, the supposed fertility treatments, the investigation, the evidence of fraud, the pregnancy announcement asking for more money. Gloria was silent for a long moment after I finished. Then she said in a careful voice, I need to tell you something. Valerie called me about 6 months ago. She said you'd been helping them with fertility treatments, but that they'd maxed out what you could give. She asked if I could contribute $15,000 for one more round. She said it would be the final round and she was so close to getting pregnant. My stomach dropped. What did you tell her? I said I didn't have that kind of money. I'm on a fixed income, but she pushed pretty hard, cried on the phone, said she'd pay me back when Ryan got his promotion. Eventually I told her I'd think about it and she stopped calling. Did she tell anyone else in the family this story? Gloria hesitated. She mentioned that she'd asked your cousin Diane too. I don't know if Diane gave her anything. I felt sick. Valerie hadn't just scammed me. She'd tried to scam the entire family using the same fertility treatment lie. I asked Gloria for Diane's number and called her after hanging up with Gloria. Diane confirmed that Valerie had called her 8 months ago with the same story. Diane had given her $8,000. She said it was for medications that insurance wouldn't cover, Diane explained. She sent me photos from a pharmacy and everything. I felt terrible for her. I told Diane about the investigation and the evidence that no treatments ever happened. Diane started crying on the phone. That money was from my emergency fund. I have 3 kids. I can't afford to just lose $8,000. I told her to call Catherine Frost. We could potentially join our cases, make it a class action against Valerie and Ryan for defrauding multiple family members. Diane said she'd think about it. 2 days later, she called Catherine's office and became part of the case. The next week was a blur of activity. Catherine filed the civil complaint in county court. My name and Diane, last name, v. Valerie Lewis and Ryan Lewis. The complaint outlined the fraud in meticulous detail. The false statements about fertility treatments, the bank records showing the money went to personal expenses, the text messages documenting the scam, the additional attempts to defraud other family members. We sought $206,000 plus interest, legal fees, and punitive damages. Catherine estimated the total judgment could reach $350,000 or more if we won. The complaint had to be served personally. Catherine hired a process server who went to Valerie and Ryan's house on a Saturday morning and handed them the papers. 20 minutes later, my phone started ringing, Valerie's name flashing on the screen. I didn't answer. She called 6 more times in rapid succession. Then the voicemails started. The first one was crying, "How could you do this to me? How could you sue me? I'm pregnant. This stress isn't good for the baby." The second was angry. "You're going to destroy our lives over money? That's what matters to you? We're family." The third was desperate. "Please call me. Please. We can work this out. You don't need to involve lawyers. I'll pay you back, I swear." I saved every voicemail and sent them to Catherine. Then I blocked Valerie's number. Ryan called next from his phone. I blocked him too. Then Valerie called from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, she was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "Please," she begged. "Please drop the lawsuit. You're going to ruin us. Ryan's company will fire him if they find out. We'll lose the house. Please. I'm your sister." "Did you use any of my money for fertility treatments?" I asked quietly. Silence. Then, "It's complicated. The treatments didn't work, so we had to use some of the money for other things to keep our lives together. But we were really trying to have a baby. That wasn't a lie." "Which clinic did you go to?" Another silence. "I don't remember the exact name. There were several." "You don't remember the name of the clinic where you supposedly spent 2 years undergoing painful procedures?" "It was a really difficult time. I've blocked a lot of it out." "You've blocked out the clinic name, but you remember every detail of the procedures when you were telling me about them?" "Why are you interrogating me? I'm the victim here. I'm the one who couldn't get pregnant." Her voice had shifted from crying to angry. This was the real Valerie, not the wounded victim she performed for sympathy, but the entitled manipulator who believed she deserved my money because she wanted it. "I'll see you in court," I said, and hung up. Blocked that number too. Within an hour, I had texts from 3 different numbers I didn't know. Friends of Valerie passing along her messages. "Please talk to her. She's devastated. This is tearing the family apart." I blocked every number. That night, Valerie posted on Facebook a long, emotional message about betrayal and family and how her sister had sued her while she was pregnant. How I was trying to take their house and destroy their lives over money I'd given as a gift. How she couldn't believe someone she loved would be so cruel. The post painted me as a monster who'd turned on her pregnant sister out of pure greed. The comments were predictable. People who didn't know the truth commenting about how terrible I was. How family should support each other. How suing a pregnant woman was unconscionable. Several people I'd known for years left comments saying they were disappointed in me. Someone even started a GoFundMe for Valerie and Ryan's legal fees. It raised $3,200 before I even saw it. I made screenshots of everything and sent it to Catherine. She called me that evening. "The social media campaign is actually good for us. She's trying to manipulate public opinion, but she's also creating more documentation of her lies. She's claiming the money was a gift, but we have texts where you explicitly said it was for IVF. She's contradicting herself in public." Catherine filed a motion for expedited discovery. We wanted Valerie and Ryan's bank records, credit card statements, travel receipts, everything showing where my money went. The judge granted the motion. Valerie's lawyer, some guy she found who specialized in personal injury cases and was clearly out of his depth, objected but was overruled. 2 weeks later, we had the records. Catherine spread them across her conference table and walked me through the devastation. My first payment of $50,000 in October 2020, $31,000 to the home improvement company the next day, $12,000 to pay off Ryan's credit card, $4,500 to Nordstrom, $2,500 cash withdrawal. Not a single medical expense. The pattern continued through every single payment. Travel agencies, furniture stores, car dealerships, credit card companies, restaurants, retail stores. They'd treated my money like a windfall and spent it on everything they wanted but couldn't afford. Catherine also found something interesting in their credit card statements. Multiple charges to bars and nightclubs during the period when Valerie was supposedly undergoing fertility treatments and couldn't drink alcohol. Receipts from liquor stores, a wine club membership, all the things someone doing IVF would avoid. "This is almost too good," Catherine said. "They were so brazen about it. Didn't even try to cover their tracks." We also discovered that Ryan had gotten his promotion in January 2022, not August 2022 like Melissa's post suggested. His salary had increased from $95,000 to $130,000. Combined with Valerie's income, they were making around $160,000 a year. More than enough to live comfortably, but they'd gotten addicted to the lifestyle my money enabled. The expensive vacations, the luxury purchases, the renovated house. They'd kept coming back to me for more because I kept giving it. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for January 2024. Catherine prepared meticulously. She had exhibits organized by date, my bank transfers matched against their expenditures, text messages from Valerie describing fake medical procedures, the social media posts showing luxury spending, Tom Sterling's investigation report, character witnesses including my Aunt Gloria and cousin Diane who testified about Valerie's attempts to defraud them too. Valerie's lawyer tried to argue that the money was a gift and I couldn't dictate how they spent it. Catherine demolished that argument with the text messages showing I'd explicitly conditioned every payment on its use for fertility treatments. Valerie took the stand. She wore a conservative dress and kept her hand on her visible baby bump, clearly playing for sympathy. But under Catherine's cross-examination, she fell apart. Catherine asked her to name the fertility clinic. Valerie said she couldn't remember. Catherine asked about the specific doctor. Valerie said she'd seen several doctors and couldn't keep them straight. Catherine asked about the procedures themselves. Valerie gave vague answers that contradicted what she'd told me in texts. Catherine showed her the text from October 2020 where she'd written, "Just got back from egg retrieval at Dr. Hammond's clinic. Retrieved 12 eggs." Then Catherine showed the bank records proving Valerie had spent $31,000 on a bathroom renovation the same week she supposedly had a medical procedure. "Can you explain how you afforded a major renovation during the same week you underwent a surgical procedure?" Valerie stumbled. "We'd been saving for the renovation. It was already planned." "But you told your sister you had no money for fertility treatments. That's why she gave you $50,000, yet you had $31,000 saved for a bathroom?" "We borrowed money from Ryan's parents." "Can you provide documentation of that loan?" Valerie looked at her lawyer. He objected. The judge overruled. Valerie admitted she couldn't provide documentation. Catherine moved through every payment systematically, showing the text messages where Valerie described fake medical procedures matched against bank records showing luxury purchases. By the end of her testimony, Valerie was crying and angry, snapping at Catherine's questions. Ryan's testimony was even worse. He tried to claim ignorance, saying he'd thought the money was genuinely for treatments and hadn't known Valerie was lying. Catherine showed him the group chat screenshots from his sister's Instagram, where he'd explicitly stated, "Finally convinced Val's sister to give us the money. She totally bought the fertility story." Ryan's face went pale. He tried to claim it was a joke. Catherine asked him what was funny about defrauding a family member of nearly $200,000. He had no answer. The judge took a 2-hour recess to review all the evidence. When court reconvened, his ruling was swift and decisive. He found that Valerie and Ryan had committed fraud. They'd obtained money under deliberately false pretenses, spent it on personal expenses contrary to the stated purpose, and continued the deception for over 2 years while attempting to defraud additional family members. The judge ordered them to pay me and Diane full restitution, $206,000 plus 18 months of accrued interest, bringing the total to $221,400. He added $18,000 in legal fees. And because the fraud was so egregious and premeditated, he added $100,000 in punitive damages. Total judgment, $339,400. Valerie gasped audibly when the number was announced. Ryan put his head in his hands. Their lawyer asked for time to pay or a payment plan. The judge set a payment schedule, $3,000 per month until the full amount was paid, starting in 30 days. Failure to make payments would result in wage garnishment and potential contempt charges. Outside the courtroom, Catherine looked satisfied. "That's an excellent outcome. The punitive damages were higher than I expected. The judge clearly found their behavior particularly egregious." I felt numb. I'd won. I'd been vindicated. The truth had been exposed publicly and legally, but I felt empty rather than triumphant. That evening, Valerie left me a voicemail from yet another number I didn't recognize. Her voice was flat and exhausted. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed us. We're going to lose everything because you couldn't just let it go. We're going to have to sell the house. Ryan might lose his job. Our baby is going to be born into this nightmare you created. I hope it was worth it. I saved the voicemail and sent it to Catherine in case we needed it later. But I also listened to it 3 times, hearing no remorse in Valerie's voice. No acknowledgement of what she'd done. No apology. Just blame directed at me for having the audacity to hold her accountable. She'd scammed me out of nearly $200,000, tried to scam other family members, lied for 2 years, and she still believed she was the victim. The first payment was due February 15th. It didn't arrive. Catherine filed a motion for wage garnishment on February 16th. The judge approved it immediately. Starting with Ryan's next paycheck, $3,000 per month would be automatically deducted and sent to us. Valerie and Ryan would have no choice about paying. The money would come out before they saw it. Over the next several months, the payments arrived like clockwork. $3,000 on the 15th of each month, directly deposited into an escrow account Catherine had set up. I watched my money slowly coming back, though at this rate it would take nearly 8 years to recover everything plus damages. I also learned through mutual acquaintances that Valerie and Ryan had indeed put their house on the market. The mortgage combined with the $3,000 monthly garnishment was too much. They sold it in May for $595,000, paid off their mortgage, and moved to a smaller rental house across town. Their social media went dark. No more vacation photos or luxury purchases. Just silence. Valerie had the baby in March, a girl they named Claire. I learned about it from a private birth announcement sent to family members, though I wasn't included. My Aunt Gloria showed me the photo. A healthy baby with Valerie's dark hair. I felt nothing looking at it. That should have been a moment of family joy, and instead it was just another reminder of how completely Valerie had shattered our relationship. Diane received her portion of the restitution and thanked me for having the courage to pursue the case. She said she never would have done it alone, but I'd shown her it was possible to stand up to family members who take advantage. We stayed in touch occasionally, the shared experience of being scammed by Valerie creating an unexpected bond. Tom Sterling called me in June to say he'd been contacted by 2 other people who'd seen news coverage of the case. Valerie had apparently run similar scams on friends before moving on to family. One woman had given her $12,000 supposedly for medical bills that never existed. Another had loaned her $8,000 for a business opportunity that turned out to be fabricated. Both women filed their own small claims cases. Valerie's pattern of fraud went back years, with me just being the biggest score. By August, 8 months after the judgment, I'd received $24,000 in restitution. Not even close to what I'd lost, but seeing the money return felt like vindication. More importantly, every payment was a reminder to Valerie and Ryan that they'd been caught, that they'd faced consequences, that they couldn't just manipulate and steal without eventually being held accountable. Catherine closed her file on the case but told me to call if they missed payments or attempted to hide assets. She'd accomplished everything she promised: public exposure, legal judgment, financial restitution. The criminal case moved slower. The detective assigned to it told me that fraud cases against family members were complicated because prosecutors worried about juries being sympathetic to the defendant. But given the clear evidence and the civil judgment, they were moving forward with charges. Trial was set for early 2025. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Rachel Winters to process everything that had happened. She specialized in family trauma and financial abuse. In our sessions, I worked through the complicated grief of losing my sister, not to death but to her own choices. Dr. Winters helped me understand that the Valerie I'd believed in never really existed. I'd loved a performance, a carefully maintained facade. The real Valerie was someone who saw people as resources to exploit. Recognizing that didn't make it hurt less, but it helped me stop blaming myself for not seeing the signs earlier. I also worked with a financial advisor named Neil Brennan to rebuild my financial security. We created aggressive savings plans and investment strategies. Neil showed me that with the restitution payments and my own salary, I could recover within 5 years if I was disciplined. He also helped me set up fraud alerts and protective measures to prevent anyone from accessing my accounts or credit. The experience had made me cautious in ways I'd never been before. 1 year after filing the lawsuit, I had my savings account back to $45,000. Combined with retirement accounts and investments I'd managed to preserve, my net worth was slowly climbing back toward where it had been before Valerie's scam. More importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts. When something felt wrong, it usually was. When someone's story didn't add up, there was probably a reason. I'd been naive and trusting, and those qualities had cost me dearly. But I'd also been strong enough to fight back and win, which taught me different lessons about my own capabilities. The criminal trial happened in March 2025, 3 years after Valerie first asked me for money. She and Ryan were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and theft by deception. The trial lasted 5 days. The evidence was overwhelming, the same documentation that had won the civil case. The jury deliberated for 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Valerie was sentenced to 2 years in prison, suspended pending completion of 5 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and full restitution of any remaining balance on the civil judgment. Ryan received the same sentence. They would have criminal records but avoid prison time if they complied with all the terms. Standing in the courtroom watching the sentence delivered, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction that they'd been held accountable. Sadness that it had come to this. Anger that I'd lost 3 years of my life to their betrayal and the legal process that followed. Relief that it was finally, definitively over. Valerie looked at me as they led her out of the courtroom. Her expression was hard to read. Maybe hatred, maybe shame, maybe just exhaustion. I looked back and felt nothing. The sister I'd loved was gone, if she'd ever existed at all. What remained was a stranger who happened to share my DNA and my history, but not my values or my trust. That evening, I met my Aunt Gloria and Cousin Diane for dinner. We toasted to justice served and family bonds that survived betrayal. Gloria told stories about my mother, about how proud she would have been that I'd stood up for myself. Diane talked about using her portion of the restitution to take her kids on a vacation they'd been putting off. I talked about my plans to finally buy a house now that my savings were rebuilding. We'd all been victims of Valerie's manipulation, but we'd all survived and found unexpected connections through the shared experience. The monthly payments continued arriving on schedule, $3,000 on the 15th like a paycheck in reverse. Each payment brought the total closer to full restitution. I stopped thinking about Valerie except when the payment notification appeared in my email. She became just an expensive lesson rather than an open wound. Catherine sent me a final bill summary showing total legal costs of $22,000, all of which would be recovered as part of the restitution. She congratulated me on seeing the case through to complete victory. Tom Sterling sent me a bottle of wine with a note, to clients who fight back. I drank it alone in my condo while reviewing my updated financial plan and feeling something close to peace. 2 years after the judgment, my net worth had recovered to pre-scam levels. The restitution payments had brought back $72,000, my salary had funded the rest, and careful investments had rebuilt what I'd lost. I closed on a small house in a quiet neighborhood in October 2026. 3 bedrooms, updated kitchen, fenced yard. Space for a life that was mine alone, built on my own terms, protected by boundaries I'd learned to enforce. The day I moved in, I thought briefly about Valerie. Wondered if she'd learned anything from the consequences she'd faced. Wondered if she looked at her daughter and felt regret for what she'd destroyed. Then I decided it didn't matter. Her choices were hers. Her lessons were hers to learn or ignore. I'd done everything I could to hold her accountable. The rest was up to her. 3 years after the initial revelation, the judgment was satisfied. The final payment arrived on schedule, bringing the total restitution to $339,400. Every dollar returned plus damages and legal fees. Catherine sent me a formal notice that the case was closed. I deposited the final check and felt a chapter closing. Valerie and Ryan had paid their debt. We would never have a relationship again. That ship had burned and sunk, and I felt no desire to salvage it. But I'd survived. I'd fought back. I'd won. And in rebuilding what they destroyed, I'd discovered I was stronger and smarter and more capable than I'd known. My mother used to say that family helps family. She was right. But she never specified what to do when family hurt family. I'd learned that lesson on my own. Sometimes helping family means holding them accountable. Sometimes love means enforcing consequences. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is protect yourself from the people who should have protected you. I sit in my house now, bought with money I saved and invested and earned, and I feel proud. Not bitter, not broken, just proud of fighting back when it would have been easier to let it go. Proud of trusting my instincts when something felt wrong. Proud of surviving betrayal and building something better from the ruins. Valerie tried to take my future to fund her present. She failed. My future is mine, secure and protected and hard-won. And nobody can ever take it away from me again. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.